Guys, I've been radio silent for a little bit. The house has been a nightmare, to say the least. I'm going to give you a walkthrough and show you what's been going down. I'm still working with the manufacturer and the people who delivered it to get to a resolution. That's, I'm reserving all judgments until this is all said and done. I'm not going to name any companies at this point. But the lowdown is somewhere between A and B getting here, the house got what they call racked, where it gets twisted. Something happens where there's like a jackknife or going over a rock or a hard turn. Something twisted this house. And so far, let me give you an idea. It's going to be a little bit hard to tell on camera. And of course this happens to me, right? This almost never happens. So this side of the house is, it's hard to tell from the vantage point, but you see that conduit coming down for the air conditioning. If you put a level to that, the roof, from the roof down, or I should say from the bottom up, it's leaning out to the right the further you go up. You put a level up, it's like 2 inches further in at the bottom. Now, so the whole home on this end is leaning that way. This side, the other side, the whole house, okay? And I think that has to do with all the structural integrities on the back end, because there's no window, there's no nothing. It's all framed, there's OSB, there's drywall. You can't just shift easy. But on this end, you don't have that structural integrity. You have the slider, you have the window, and you have this huge tall porch because this is a loft. So this acts as leverage. So if something does happen, it gets jolted, all this can pull this way from above. There's nothing to stop that inertia. I argued there should be corner bracing. They said, well, they never do that, so and it hasn't been needed. But I beg to differ. But at any rate, their first solution was, because if you looked at this from head on, it just twisted, so that these posts on the end of the porch were so slanted it was ridiculous, and leaning to the right. So what they did was loosen the lag bolts of the wooden frame. This is built on top of this metal frame, right? They loosened the lags from here to the sliders and moved the floor. So use the come along and drag the floor to the right to straighten these out. But all that did was shoot the deck out to the right so that the house is basically curved. And it still did nothing about the lean of the house itself. They're putting it on the installers, saying that they're supposed to be perimeter piers and this and that and the other thing, and that the rear was off the most, saying it wasn't level. The rear, both corners and the back were down an inch, and I fixed that in 10 minutes after they left. They've been here a couple times already. That was an easy fix, and that would have nothing to do with the racking of the house. And their suggestion of how to fix it from the specialist today was not, engineering wise, it was not a sound suggestion, which was to put piers on the wooden edge here a little higher than normal and let the house settle, and then maybe it would correct the lean. I don't see that working. The house is lagged right to the frame. Maybe it could help a little bit, but anyway, so basically we have like a curved house. It curves inward from the porch in, it curves in and then back out again at the bottom. And the top, it's leaning out. So my thoughts now, and there's a lot more to show you. Well, actually, let me show you the rest now. So yeah, the whole house leans hard right. And let me show you some good examples of that. And every time I think I have an epiphany or we're moving forward, we find something else really bad. If you look at the door, it's closed up there and recessed. Come down here, you can see light. It's not even close. Gives you better. Almost touching there, and we're out significantly here. Again, whole house is leaning to the right. It's even more dramatic in here. So I like to let gravity show you a little bit better. As soon as we say hello to Chuckles McGillicuddy. Hey, baby. So once these stop moving, all right. So now looking at it this way, that's how much the house is leaning. It's covering the trim here. And down here we have over an inch of lean, okay? Not to mention that this window and the slider, you can't really tell with these closed, are 1/2 inch different. One's level, one isn't. So the gap between the window and the slider is 1/2 inch shorter over here than it is over here. May get corrected somewhat if we can correct this, but the racking of the house, you see the crack up there? And then this whole window section is, from what they're telling me, uniquely, like solidly framed, like with a metal frame around all three of these to keep them from moving. And you could see the result of the racking, extreme cracking at every corner. And you can further see the result. So even if we have everything perfectly level at the frame, but now look at how off the window is. I mean, it's dramatic. And no matter what we did with the frame on either side, did nothing to correct this. So that metal frame that got racked during this was permanently twisted. It can't be corrected. And further evidence over here, so that when this did happen, so these windows got, cockeyed, right? So these were locked. And when they were locked, when they racked hard this way, well, actually it would have went this way, you can see the whole middle frame completely bent. So these windows are probably toast. I could never lock it. That one will lock, right? That locks, but this one is like over a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch too high, and they're all that way. And you can see the extreme slant. So these windows would have to, all this drywall would have to be cut out. The siding would have to be taken off on the other side because these windows are framed from the outside, and all this would have to be recased and replaced. So that's the big thing we found today. That's a big one. And, I believe that they'd be willing to do that. I don't think they have a logical way to straighten the house, but I do. And people will be saying, well, maybe it's just the whole house is leaning forward as well. Well, to show that I believe it's just, it got tweaked, or you could see how off that is, right? Huge. A huge amount. Now, as soon as we get towards the middle of the house, everything, like this window, is spot on, right? So when it did get racked, it just destroyed the framing around those windows. So that no matter how level you get the frame, that will never be right again. That has to be redone. So that's not the way the house is sitting now. It has to do with what happened when it got racked. So there's that. Now, I'll have more stuff to show you inside in a minute. What we did, or what they had done, like I said, we used a come along and we slid, because everything was leaning way that way, is we used a come along and slid this wooden frame, slid it on top of this, slid it that way, and it straightened things out. But like I said, it brought the deck way out here and curved in. So what my thoughts are now is because it's just lags that go up through the the 2x6s here into so these lags go up into and keep it from going side to side. You see they're out right now, which allowed us to slide this lumber this way to try and correct that on that end. The thing is, I believe we can do the same thing here where it meets the house. This is where we kept the lags in, right? I believe, because this lower part is in that way, we remove the lags here and maybe 10 feet this way towards that end of the house. And instead of using the come along down on the end to move the end of the porch, we use the come along around this point, and we pull this lumber the same way we did the porch. The roof is gonna wanna stay straight, the roof line. So basically what we're doing is the roof line came this way. We can't just pull the roof over. But what we can do is set up the come along. I'm thinking maybe even 2 separate come alongs on 2 separate beams, and slide this lumber this way. What that should do is it'll kick this bottom out, and the hope is the top stays in place and we can bring the bottom out. By bringing the bottom out, if the top stays in place, and I have some more thoughts on that, bringing the floor, this part of the floor, that way will suck everything down here that way, which is where it needs to go to make this line up. So this should stay pretty about where it is, and then sliding the floor that way will bring this in line and hopefully straighten this whole wall out. Now, to further support that, I'm thinking, the last thing to go on for the roof is the shingles at the crown there. So I'm thinking to even take it a step further is to put in a couple eye bolts, maybe from where those 2 roofs meet at the peak across the porch, and right down, take those shingles off, put some eye bolts down into the strongest parts of the frame that we can up there, and put some tie down supports to just kind of keep the roof from wanting to go that way. And then when we're pulling the floor that way, the roof will want to even more stay still, where the floor will move, the roof won't, and we'll just take that twist out. So if we're looking at it this way, moving the floor, but the roof is the tip of my fingers, the floor, we move the floor, takes that twist out. We're actually accommodating the twist by moving the floor to meet the roof that moved. So that's my hope. We'll see. You can see in the windows, everyone's gonna say, oh, that's just your frame, or it's the wooden frame, it's your piers, or just your piers. Don't go there, because we've tried every possible combination. That frame that holds these windows is tweaked 100%. That variance does not change no matter what you do on either side of this with the frame, whether you go uphill, downhill, with the wooden frame, the steel frame, doesn't matter, that doesn't move. That's because the frame that supports all these windows was tweaked permanently, okay? So I don't want to hear that in the comments. So that's my hope. That's how much we've moved the house or the porch to help, because it's dragging away from the lower 2 box steps. So that's my hope. The guy who brought this into the park, he's going to come out and just make sure everything's 100% level, so they can't keep pointing fingers at him. And they can't say it was him that did it or the driver that did it from Ocala down to the place where my guy picked it up from. So that's that. They've been here twice. Nothing's really gotten done. And they just keep blaming the setup crew. I believe they're well-intentioned, okay? But we're just not making progress. Other things that bother me, like the closet, nothing was... I still have to redo it all. It's a mess, but you can't really tell. It's very dark. All of these, like this rack for clothing was 10 inches lower, and you couldn't even hang a baby diaper from it without hitting. And I raised it all, but I realized every single screw except for one was going just into drywall, nothing else. One had a plastic anchor. The rest of these are just screws going into drywall. No anchors, no studs. So I wasn't happy about that. Again, not a big deal. We can fix that. Now the shower, and then every morning I go back into the shower and start sliding around because the slime would build up because they have this rubber gasket, rubber ring on the top side instead of using plumber's putty, which would be much lower. Now, I don't know the logic behind this plastic tub because it's not recessed here. So even with plumber's putty, this will never be recessed. So water will always be, there will always be some standing water, but it's substantially less than having this big fat black ring here. And their reasoning was, well, this is how we do it because in Florida, we don't know how long they're going to sit on the lots. That's why you don't use plumber's tape. And I kept saying, you mean plumber's putty, right? And he's like, yeah, plumber's tape. I'm like, okay, whatever. But that made no sense whatsoever. So when I tried to take this off, this ring off, and then I got the tool, I have the tool to spin this drain out just to take this out, and I was going to put plumber's putty. Well, that's not how they install it. They do something down below which you can't get to just suck this down. So when I use the tool to spin this out, it just spins. It doesn't spin out. It just spins, got loose. Now I can't even take a shower in here because this is installed some funky way. And they think, oh, this is how we've always done it. That's just history. No one's had a problem with that. Well, I have a problem with it. You know, an eighth of an inch of water that's always here. I was having fruit flies. This would be like scummy because I'd have to take this sponge for like 10 minutes every morning to get the water out because this would just have sitting water all day, every day. So not impressed with that. Again, fixable, hardly worth mentioning, but in the scheme of things, there's a lot. I know there's other things. I'm not going to get into every little thing. I'm just praying they'll make it right. I'm praying my idea to get some of this lean out will work and that they'll do the right thing. But ultimately, what's supposed to be an amazing time in my life has turned into an absolute nightmare. I feel like everything's been put on me. Everyone's maintaining they're going to do the right thing, yet I still see a lot of finger pointing and a guy coming out that's the specialist that just immediately gets out of his vehicle and starts putting everything on the installers, which has nothing to do with the fact that this was racked and no real solution to fix it. I think my solution is by far the most viable. This has been an absolute nightmare. You spend over 100 grand and now I'm like the nuisance. I did talk to the owner. Seems like a real nice guy, but they keep sending these guys out that aren't impressing me, and they're supposed to be the best of the best. I believe they mean well. They have some decent ideas, and then other things are just, like this guy today, I really didn't offer anything constructive. But they're like, we'll get it level and we'll go from there. Keep going, we'll go from there. A, B, I guess I know there's steps we have to go through. But I don't think anything would be even moving forward if I wasn't kicking and screaming and thinking of fixes with an engineering mind that aren't. If I was just some like old lady or someone who didn't know, you'd be screwed. You just deal with it, right? And I think that's disgusting. So the blame game doesn't work for me. I'm trying to be proactive, even though it shouldn't be my responsibility. I should be able to sit back and say, hey, fix it. I spent a lot of money. And the guy who delivered it, I paid him directly, but it's the same guy so the guy I bought it through, it's the same guy he uses. I paid the same money. So whether the money came from him or me, it doesn't matter. It's the same guy. And he does all these in this park. So what they're saying that, he screwed up and didn't do this, do that. This entire park is littered with these same type of homes that he has delivered, and they're all perfectly square. I went to almost each one of them today and put a square up on the porch, all around. Everything's good to go. So an accident happened on the way here, but that's not my fault, and it shouldn't be my problem. But I'm trying to come up with ways to fix it. And, ultimately, I'm just going to have to grin and bear the fact that this new home is going to be like a used beater by the time this is all done. But the sales guy Ross, he and I become friends. I think he's batting for me, and I think the company means well, but they're sending guys down that aren't giving me the warm and fuzzies. ultimately, I think I'm going to have to fix the major issues myself, and then the results of this racking, more importantly, those windows, they're going to, I think, most likely cut all that drywall out and probably take all the siding off and cut all that out and replace it all, new frames, new everything. And if my idea doesn't go 100%, either way, they're going to have to do that with the slider as well. I'll get there. I always figure out a way, adapt and overcome. So that's why it's been a little weird. I was supposed to be kicking off my channel. I've got a lot of footage from all of this, from the time it was delivered to now, and I'll put all that together and we'll present something. But I'm giving the manufacturer a chance to be heroes instead of zeros, and we'll give them the time to do that. Anyway, I'm tired. Thank God we have a brand new bathhouse like 50 yards down the way. Nobody's around, so I get to use that by myself, and because I can't take a shower in here now, because their brainchild of an idea, this whole idea of the drain and the plumber's tape, they don't use it because of here in Florida, they don't know how long they're going to sit, and I guess they're worried about like a temperature variations. None of it makes any sense. I've used plumber's putty in houses that have just been fine for 10, 15 years through all kinds of temperature variations. It just doesn't even make any sense. So to keep the drain that high so that water stays in your shower stall day in and day out, I don't know, I just don't get it. Anyway, that's where we're at. Hopefully I have some better news. The install guys are going to come back out on Saturdays to make sure everything's 100% level, so then I can say, all right, now here's where we're at with the frames the way you want it to be. So now what are you going to do? And Russ is confident, and they tell me they're confident that they have, and they're a big enough company, they can get a crew here, and if they have to do that major construction to fix all this, that they'll do it. And I'm keeping faith that that's what's going to happen. So I'll let you know, and if that's the case, I'll give them all the praise. It's not their fault. They got racked on the way down here. Technically they could say, well, we didn't do it, which wouldn't be smart, but they could, right? So we're gonna give them that time, and in the meantime, I just have to grin and bear it. Anyway, I'm coming home June 26th through July 6th. So I will hopefully see most of you when I get back. So anyway, peace out, much love. Hopefully everybody's having a good week. We'll catch you later.